Hello, young people. My name is Rick Bezet. I pastor a church in Arkansas. It's called New Life Church. I'm married. My wife's name is Michelle. I got 4 kids, and I'm excited. A bunch of young people, you, have asked me some questions. As a pastor, that doesn't always happen, so I'm glad to be able to answer these. I'll give it my best shot. Let's look at your first question. Well, being in the ministry is nothing like choosing a career. Like if you want to be a lawyer, choose it and be a good one. If you want to be a teacher, choose it and be a good one. But if you want to be in the ministry, it has to first choose you. For example, I'm raising kids and I would love for my children to be in the ministry, but I can't choose it for them and I can't talk them into it. God has to call you to do ministry. Why is that so important? Because ministry is hard. And there's going to be days where you want to quit. But if you know you're called by God, you'll get up again and you'll ace it. You got to be called. I've had a lot of mentors in ministry, but no matter what, whether you're a pastor or whatever it is that you choose to do, let me give you some good advice. I've never had anyone come to me and say, hey, I want to be your mentor. That hasn't happened. But yet I have a lot of mentors. Well, how did I get them? I asked them to help me. And I also do not have any mentors who across the board mentor me. It's more categorical. In other words, I might have someone who's good at raising their kids, and I'll ask them, will you help me with raising my kids? Or I might find somebody who's a great speaker and they're good at preparing sermons, and I might ask them that. Or I might have someone like my pastor who is loaded with integrity. So I ask him questions about integrity. But you're going to have mentors. To make it in life, especially now, you got to have somebody who will speak truth to you, and it's usually going to be someone that you ask to help you. You know, putting a sermon together is tough. I remember when I was first called into the ministry, I would hear pastors say, I'm working on a sermon, I'm putting together a sermon. And I remember thinking, I wonder what they're doing in there. What do you do in there? Do you have books everywhere? Are you just praying and hoping? Well, through the years, I put together a system and a way that I can put a sermon together. And there's about 10 things. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but there's about 10 things. If you put them in a sermon, it will help you. Things like revelation from the Lord, like humor, like being transparent, something that's applicational that they can take home, something academic, because a lot of people are smart and well-read, something that is not only applicational, but relevant, like, wow, he relates to the world that I live in. I think you have to hit these issues because you only have about 30 minutes in a sermon. And you got to hit them hard. You young people ask good questions. I certainly have hit rock bottom, but nothing more than after my wife and I were counseling with this young lady who was very depressed, and one day I think I was in a bad mood, and I just said to her, and I hate this story, I said, I don't know if you're really depressed. I think you're just coming over to my home to hang out with my wife and I because you're lonely. And it hurt her feelings. And she got mad. She ran out of our home. And she went to her home and she found her dad's pistol. And she put it in her mouth and she killed herself. And when I got that phone call, that was a really low point. I know I'm responsible for what happened to that girl. And I've had to walk through it. And I still do sometimes. But you're gonna hit bottom. And the beautiful thing is, if you just stay in there with God, His hand is mighty. And He is the lifter of our head. Like your countenance, when it's down, some of you might be discouraged right now. Give the Lord a chance because He's great at it. That's a good question. I'm going to have to read into it a little bit. I'm going to have to assume that you mean the world. like mistakes, experiences in the world to be able to minister more appropriately. And I get that because I was in the world. When I was in college, I ran against the things of God with all of my might. And so, yeah, I draw from some of those. But you know what? I have to work twice as hard to be healed from those days. It's my wife who has served the Lord since she was 6 years old every day of her life. She never fell away. That's a great experience. You don't have to go out there to learn. The Lord will show you what's going on out there. The scripture is amazing. So I like my wife's testimony way more than mine. Going back to college would not be exciting, but if I had to, I would probably choose business. You know what I never noticed before is that when you're a pastor of a church, there's still a business side to it. What you don't want to do is let the business side of the church dominate what's going on. That has to be Jesus. But you have to keep things with integrity. You still have bills to pay. You have to make decisions on budget. You have to understand HR. That whole world is huge. So for years, I've had to study and catch up to learn about business because I'm making business decisions even in a church. So I always encourage people that if you're going to go to school and you're going to be in the ministry, choose theology, but also choose business. You're going to need them both. Yeah, anytime I hear a question about ministry and vision and values, I love talking about that because you know what I've noticed? Vision shifts around. I've been in ministry now for 29 years. It'll be 30 years next year. 30 years married, 30 years in ministry. And the vision has changed at least 2 or 3 times in every one of those years. But your values, they better never change. Take some time as a young person and write down the values. Like when you run this race and you hit that tape, what do you want it to look like? That's where the values are going to come in. And once you establish those values, live with the end in mind because the end will come and values are the best thing to run with. So I'm not sure if that'll help you or not. That's the best I have. I just wanted to speak to you like life really counts and the Lord really loves you and that ministry might be something that God calls you to do. Even if He doesn't, I think these principles are the same. Come on, young people, let's do this thing right.